Lewis Hamilton's first real lap in the Ferrari SF-26 didn't end how it was supposed to. No radio, no explanation, and no images of what happened after turn 8. Ferrari says everything is fine, but the car never came back out. Insiders close to the engine department are pointing to something far more serious than the team wants to admit. A potential failure inside the new 0.67-6 hybrid logic. That could rewrite the limits of Ferrari's entire 2026 project. And the worst part? It might not have been a breakdown, but a shutdown. Because what's quietly being reviewed right now, by the FIA, by engineers, and by rivals, is whether Hamilton's Ferrari stopped, or whether it stopped itself. And if that's true, then this was never a failure. It was a warning, buried inside the car's own code. According to Ferrari, nothing went wrong. 3 laps were completed. The conditions were wet. The car performed as expected. Hamilton was pleased. That's the statement: clean, controlled, and strategically vague. But everyone watching knows that's not the full story. Because even in the limited clips Ferrari released, you can see the hesitation, the throttle lift, the unusually quiet final sector, and then the entry into the pit lane without a 4th lap. That wasn't part of the original plan. And the car never came back out again. There was no footage of Hamilton climbing out of the car. No quotes from the driver. No breakdown of telemetry. Nothing you'd expect from a launch this important. Especially for a team that's just signed the biggest name in modern F1 history. And this wasn't some backdoor shakedown. It was Ferrari's first public rollout of their 2026 machine. New power unit. New chassis. New era. So why cut it short? Why close the garage shutters? Why issue such a neutral, unbothered press release? If everything was really fine? The truth is, Ferrari said the absolute minimum. Not because the session was routine, but because something happened they didn't want to explain. And in Formula One, silence isn't damage control. It's containment. If the car had suffered a mechanical failure, we'd know by now. That's the irony. Because real failures leave evidence. They force teams to explain, to reassure, to defend. But this wasn't a fire. It wasn't smoke or debris. It was a controlled glide. A silent return to the garage, followed by total media blackout. And in 2026 spec cars, that silence means something else entirely. It points to logic. Because modern F1 hybrids are built with self-protection protocols. If the voltage spikes, if temperature deltas widen, if energy recovery patterns fall outside of range, the system has one job: shut it down. Not later. Not after consultation. Instantly. Automatically. Without asking the driver. It's software, not instinct. And what happened to Hamilton's SF-26 checks every box for that kind of shutdown. No sudden power loss. No hydraulic collapse. No wheel lock. Just the system, stopping itself. The lap wasn't aborted because of a broken component. It was aborted because something in the data triggered a pre-coded safety sequence. And once that signal hits, the car isn't allowed to push again until the internal logic is cleared and reset. Which explains exactly why it didn't come back out. Because whatever happened inside the control unit, Ferrari couldn't solve it in real time. And they didn't want the cameras anywhere near the attempt. In the older eras of Formula One, when a car failed, the driver told the team. He felt it. He heard it. He made the call. But that hierarchy has changed. In 2026, especially with Ferrari's next-gen hybrid unit, the driver isn't at the top of the decision tree anymore. The car decides when to push. The car decides when to lift. And if certain thresholds are crossed, the car can decide to stop. Not out of fear, but out of design. Because Ferrari's new system isn't just a power unit, it's a decision-making engine. It processes temperatures, electrical loads, charge-discharge symmetry, torque blending, fuel flow transitions all in real time. And when any of those inputs feel unstable, the software doesn't hesitate. It overrides the throttle. It prevents redeployment. And it tells the driver, "You're done." No warning. No delay. Just silence. And if that's what happened in Fiorano, then Hamilton didn't lift. He was lifted. The car disengaged power, glided into the pit lane, and ran a shutdown protocol before anything reached failure state. It's not that something broke. It's that the logic saw a future break and erased the possibility. Which raises the most uncomfortable question of all. Is the SF-26 already making decisions Ferrari doesn't fully understand? Because when the car starts stopping itself, you're no longer testing performance. You're testing control. If what happened in Fiorano was the result of an automated shutdown, then Ferrari may have just revealed more about their 2026 strategy than they intended. Because this wasn't just a test of hardware. It was a test of trust. Trust in a control unit. Trust in code. Trust in a black box that now decides when the car is safe to run and when it's not. And this kind of trust comes with consequences. Because a black box doesn't argue. It doesn't explain. It doesn't negotiate with the driver. It runs logic trees. It follows conditional thresholds. And it executes protocols that were programmed weeks ago by engineers who may not have foreseen every scenario. That's what makes this so dangerous. Not because it failed, but because it didn't. It performed exactly as written. But the moment a system like that shuts down, the question isn't just what went wrong. It's what didn't the car want to risk? And more importantly, how will we ever know? Because this is the future the 2026 regulations have created. Power units that are too complex to monitor in real time. Energy systems governed by software that makes real-time decisions faster than a human could process. And when something goes quiet, like the SF-26 did, there's no crash, no data spike, no warning. Just a decision. Made silently. Hidden inside the logic. Ferrari knows what triggered it. But they're not showing that. They've released no code logs. No data windows. No telemetry replay. Because that's the point of a black box. It doesn't reveal the decision. It only confirms the consequence. Right now, Ferrari can still say this was a test. That it was just data gathering. That the shutdown was a protective measure. Not a failure. But what happens when that shutdown never happens again? Because this is what makes self-regulating systems so dangerous and so powerful. They don't just protect hardware. They learn. They adapt. And eventually, they stop interrupting performance. Because they've already rewritten the limits. That's what this test might have been about. Not a failed run, but a calibration event. A controlled scenario designed to trigger the logic early, so the system could adjust its response before real racing begins. Because once the threshold gets pushed high enough, once the logic stops stepping in, Ferrari won't just have a reliable car. They'll have an invisible advantage. A hybrid control unit that no longer stops itself. No longer raises flags. No longer leaves clues. It will look perfect. Drive clean. Deploy power where no one expects. And no one, not Mercedes, not Red Bull, not even the FIA, will be able to prove when it's over the line. Because the shutdowns will be gone. And that's what should worry everyone else on the grid. Because if Ferrari is already testing for failure conditions now, they're not preparing for the season. They're preparing to disappear. Looking back, it might not be the shutdown itself that defines this moment. It might be what followed it. The silence. The carefully edited footage. The absence of Hamilton from post-run interviews. The total lack of technical explanation from a team that usually overshares when they want to control the story. Ferrari didn't defend the car. They didn't deny the shutdown. They didn't clarify whether it was software or hardware. They just moved on, as if the silence would be mistaken for stability. But in Formula One, silence isn't passive. It's strategic. Because when a team has something to hide, they bury it in noise. When a team has something powerful, they hide it in plain sight, by saying nothing. And that's what makes the shutdown feel different. Not because it was dramatic, but because it wasn't. It didn't break the car. It didn't expose a flaw. It executed exactly the way it was supposed to. Quiet, clean, non-explosive, and completely outside the control of the driver. Which means the next time the SF-26 goes out, it won't stop. It won't hesitate. And if Ferrari has adjusted the logic, it won't even leave a trace. The shutdown wasn't the failure. It was the last visible piece of a system that's now designed not to reveal itself. And if that system holds, if the car stops hiding, but the logic keeps working, then this wasn't a failed test. It was a warning shot. And the next time the SF-26 shuts something down, it might not be itself. It might be the rest of the grid.